Hello. We're back once again for GPS Live for the week of May 10th, 2024. My name is Tristan Morris.
And I'm Jonathan Singer.
And we are here to talk about some cybersecurity news that we found this week. And boy, did we find some good stuff this week. There was some interesting things going on. So Jonathan, how have you been this week before we get started?
You know, I've been quite well, having some fun. It is now officially hot season down here in Florida, so that's nothing new. But pool season is also open too. And just keeping track of all the exciting things going on this week, right? We're really starting to kick into graduation season. So if you get emails that are talking about graduation phishing and scams and all kinds of things like that, be on the lookout. But also congratulations to all of those up and coming future cyber defenders. We look forward to you joining our team.
Go check out GPS University, where you can learn all about Guidepoint security and all about security practices and learn great skills. If it's getting warm down there in Florida, it's also getting nice up here in Seattle, right? Like total opposite ends of the country, different corners, but we're getting some nice weather. I'm excited. I'm not excited for the fact that we have mass coronal ejections that are potentially going to wipe out power across the world right now. According to some reports that I've seen, there's been some crazy sunspot activity, but I am excited for the fact that we're supposed to get northern lights as far south as Texas.
Wow.
Because of the amount of energy being put out by the sun right now. That is some wild stuff. So that's potentially tonight you might be able to see some northern lights no matter where you are. And speaking of that, no matter where you are, jump in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. We love interacting with you guys and seeing the types of things that are piquing your interest. And we also absolutely love getting your opinions on the stories as we're talking about them. So if you're watching this live, go ahead and leave a comment, and we will try to incorporate that into the conversation. And if you're not watching live, if you're on demand, thank you so much for giving us some of your time and reviewing this with us. But before we go any further, we do need to say that the views and opinions that Jonathan and I express are our own. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Guidepoint Security as a company. And on top of that, we should also want to mention that any companies that we mention, we are neither like endorsing or opposite of endorsing those companies.
We're trying to figure out this for a show, but from time to time we do mention particular brands, both in a good manner and sometimes in a room for improvement. And by no means are we saying that any of these products or businesses are thumbs up or thumbs down in any particular matter. It's just some cool opinions.
Yeah. So sometimes we cover stories about large companies having issues, and we are not saying that you should not use those companies. We're just covering the news as we see it. But with that, Jonathan, do we want to get going? We want to jump into our first stuff?
Let's do it here. Yeah, we can kick this off with something new coming to us from Ars Technica, actually.
Yeah.
You found this article. In fact, you surprisingly did a lot of the research this week, and I'm really proud and impressed. Go, Tristan.
I jumped into Slack this morning with a story bomb of just things that I had found.
But fresh research, I mean, as fresh as May 6th this week, coming to us about a new novel attack that targets VPNs called Tunnel Vision. Now, this isn't related to the Windows update that broke VPNs. This is more specific to taking advantage of an age-old technique built into everybody's favorite networking protocol, DHCP. Now, for those not familiar, Tristan's a rogue DHCP server today. But when you join a network, especially a home network, oftentimes you simply just say, hey, give me an IP address. Yeah. And your router, operating as a DHCP server, gives you an IP and welcomes you to the network. And you are now free to enjoy the internet. Keep your arms and legs inside the ride. But, being a complex bit of networking here, there's a ton of parameters that come with being a DHCP server and also how to communicate in this DHCP protocol. Yeah. Effectively, there's been a bit of a discovery around option 121, and that allows data to route to different locations. But It seems like there's a lot more going on to this, right, Tristan?
Yeah, there's a lot more going on within this. So I believe the group was Leviathan Security Group, which was the group that posted this initially. But what this was effectively allowing, right, is anyone to join a network, create their own rogue DHCP server on that network, and start overwriting the rules of whatever VPN you're using. And this is almost universal, like you said. Almost any VPN can be targeted by this attack. And all that they're doing, and I'm saying all that they're doing as though it's just a really simple thing that anyone can do. But I mean, the true nature of it is, right, that like even just from reading kind of the basic write-up of things without watching like the in-depth video, you can have a pretty full understanding of how this attack works. And if you know a little bit about networking, be able to probably, kind of recreate and pull this off. But essentially they're taking a look at the CIDR range that most VPNs use, where they would create a /0 network, right? Or a key through that, and they're just saying, okay, cool, then we're just going to set ours to /1, set a higher priority to that, and what they can do then is target any IP address that they want to on that network, and they can reroute their traffic away from the VPN and through their own DHCP and through their own server, effectively leaving the VPN connected to the machine. So you show on your machine that you are connected and protected by this virtual private network, while all of your traffic is actually routing through a completely different IP address, and they can just snoop and steal all of that.
You actually just flipped a switch in my brain. I actually understand it now. So we're trying to put the math together earlier. So check this out, right? And you mentioned priorities. So when you're connected to a network, your computer has a series of network priorities. So when you want to go to a website and you translate the DNS down to an IP address, the question is asked, where does this connection go based off of this IP destination? And so what's happening here is, using option 121, you're creating a higher priority connection. And so while your computer normally may say all internet traffic needs to go over to this VPN tunnel because it has a higher priority than your local network, right? That's initially established. We're adding a new, even higher priority network, higher than your VPN tunnel. And so now your computer goes, well, then I'm just going to go to the one that is most correct in this case. And now suddenly it's routing through a third party.
And it's based on specificity as well, right? Because a /0 for CIDR range is like default, right? It's just basic. Everything can go there. And so they're saying, oh, /1, right? It's just by being specific in where the traffic should be routed, your computer will automatically prioritize that. And so they're just taking all of your traffic. And the crazy thing about it is you still see that little key right up in your address bar. You still see that little lock that says like, oh, you are connected to the VPN. But all your traffic is going somewhere else. Now, Jonathan, you have a deeper understanding of a lot of this, and so you are also looking into the ways that you can mitigate this.
Correct. We are not kind of completely, stuck here. First off, you did mention that Android, by not implementing RFC, is already capable of doing this. And everything that I'm reading too, it only appears to be specific to IPv4. So also, if you're looking at IPv6, that may be a potential route. But finally, DHCP snooping. This is one of those things that can help you prevent multiple DHCP servers from existing. So as a network administrator, your primary DHCP server, one in charge of your network that you run, you need to make sure stuff like that is turned on, because it really becomes this cat and mouse game when there's multiple DHCP servers talking, and who is ultimately controlling what the rules and regulations of your network are. So we're still learning more about this. The attack has been given a CVE, so it is, being addressed and taken seriously by a lot of different organizations. We were trying to figure out, like, how do you determine if this is happening ultimately from a network level? You can do things like check your routing table local to your machine and see if there's a higher priority than the local network that you're already established to, and or the VPN tunnel that is established, and see if there's some other random network that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, a thing that every random internet user who is forced to use a VPN by their company knows how to do, right?
I bring up my routing table on my Mac all the time just to see why a connection is not going the place I need it to.
It's the way I start my morning, right? It's wake up, coffee, Wordle, check my routing table.
Exactly.
You just got to go through the steps. But this is a really interesting, great story, and I mean, awesome research by Leviathan Security Group. That you can go check out. Producer Ben has posted the link to this story, and the link to the research itself is at the bottom of that story. Absolutely should go check that out. But also on the topic of routing and routers in your network traffic is the new Cuttlefish malware that is infecting small office and home office routers and medium sized kind of that area of the routing world. We don't want to spend too long on this because we've talked about different things like this before. But this new Cuttlefish malware is infecting routers and is able to specifically look for traffic that contains credentials, grab that and send it back off. And once again, it is happening by creating little VPNs and side channels in order to do that. It has some code that overlaps with Hiatus Rat, which was previously associated with nation state actors, but there's really no concrete links between the two. And as of right now, there's no real known initial infection vector. We don't know exactly how it's going in, but it could just be brute forcing credentials on routers that are vulnerable to this.
Yeah. Now, because these are all, network related, we do encourage all of those with their CCIE to talk in the comments about your opinion of option 121, according to RFC. But in addition to that, this is actually interesting because small office, home office equipment, specifically routers, operating as like a machine in the middle, intercepting traffic, is going to be a nice foreshadow for our story coming up right after this. Which actually, I'll go ahead and take this opportunity, in fact, to even segue in, which real quickly, always update your router's firmware to help patch bugs. It's often ignored. We've talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
But okay, so we'll kind of segue right into this next one. But a really cool article coming to us from Hackaday is claiming that 50% of internet traffic today is now bots. We predicted this years ago. I didn't realize this, but you're explaining to me that this is part of your research. Is what is the dead internet theory?
Well, so this has been kind of like an internet subculture, like conspiracy theory for a long time, right? And the crazy thing is, like, far longer than the idea of like AI generated content that we've been living in the last like year or two, right? The dead internet theory has been around for a really long time, which was the idea that the majority of the internet, so 50% plus any amount, was just turned over to bots and automatically generated content. And so the likelihood that you were just engaging with bots online was incredibly high. And that's been a theory for a really long time. And some of the things that pointed to that, right, were like the similarity of comments and posts and articles and like opinions that you would see generated about things. And the fact that like if you posted, an opinion that was kind of different, like astroturfing the comment section on something, right, with these like similar pastes, and also something that some people would attribute into dead internet theory, right, was like when there was any kind of political movement or a what's the other thing I'm looking for, like a petition or anything that needed to be signed, right? People creating websites that was just like, hey, this is an automatic form filler. You just go put your name in it and click the button, and it'll email all of the politicians and it'll sign all the petitions for you to, in support of this certain thing. It's like, well, then how much of that traffic is actually bot generated? But Imperva has released a new report that they found that 50% of the internet is indeed bots. Like it is just bot activity.
We made it. But what's interesting is they do call out a couple of key takeaways from the report, right? And we'll kind of breeze through a couple of these, but one of them is that malicious automated traffic continues to increase. Like this is something that we've been dealing with for a long time. Bot-based scanners that are just pilfering across the internet, throwing out stuff, just seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And when something is discovered, then taking that back and following up with an attack and different types of, infiltration techniques.
Right.
The next one coming up, though, is this generative AI, which now we don't just have bots that are like, Python scripts or things like that, but these bots are now phone calls and interacting and texting. And, with the advent of higher quality video capabilities, we're seeing, interaction with, what is it? Like you go to this, they have these now in stores. They have like the giant, like, AI kiosk, and it's like a person, and you can ask them and they'll like have a conversation with you. Like we're seeing this crazy stuff coming
off the
out
top
now.
of my head, that sounds like the most that sounds like the most like Japanese convenience store thing
Oh,
right?
I don't want to interact with any actual checkout person. I just
Right,
want to
like there's a kiosk there, and I go up and I push the button and I interact with the there was actually a guy that I know was recently on a trip through Europe, and he was staying at a hotel, I believe in Norway, and he got there and the check-in agent was just an AI kiosk. And he posted a story though. He was like, I've been stuck at this check-in counter for an hour because the AI keeps looping and breaking on the check-in. It just won't give me a working key. But yeah, this report finding that 50% of that content, actually this dovetails into kind of like one of my special interest like things that I did a deep dive on. Not to give any kind of like commentary or opinion on everything that's happening around TikTok right now, right? But there's a researcher who I follow, funnily enough, on TikTok, but he did a very big breakdown of bot culture and bots as the actual threat, right? It's not the fact that like algorithms exist and do specific things, or like the way that they're working. Like he does a bunch of research into like, yes, their algorithms very unique and special and powerful, but the real threat is the fact that like bots can proliferate on here. And the way that he researches this and finds this is he looks for videos that have like a high what's the word that I'm looking for? Controversy rating, I guess you could call it, right?
Okay.
Like they're very opinionated. The comment section is very broken down, and then he can watch the comment activity that happens on those and see the kind of astroturfing that we're talking about. And then he can validate that those are bot accounts by going and looking at other comments they've made. And his big thing is he's like, the biggest tell that you're looking at something that's bot generated is that most people can speak one language, some people can speak two languages, and a very small amount of people can speak three or more languages. And you will find thousands and thousands of accounts that are commenting in every language possible. And he's like, so it's clearly just like generated bot content. And I think that it's interesting the fact that we now have to be so careful, and we're all having to learn how to identify AI generated photos and videos, right? Count the fingers, count the number of legs on chairs. Like, are these things like real and valid? But then when it comes to bot content and its generation and being posted, the way that we have to be careful about looking for that is like going to validate the sources of these things and seeing how many languages is it posting in? Is it expressing a diverse range of opinions? Is everything that it says exactly the same? These ways that we have to do this, we're all having to get so smart about that. And that applies in cybersecurity to the fact that like, right, you're looking at the proliferation of bots on the internet and people engaging with those bots, and by engagement, handing over communication methods and vectors to potential bad actors.
Yeah. Now, the reason I was kind of hinting at the previous story regarding the home routers is one of the other parts of their research found that a quarter of bad bot traffic, so stuff that's used for malicious intentions, like I said, poking at websites just to see if they can hack in, all kinds of different stuff like that, is coming from home networks and mobile ISPs. So residential and mobile ISPs, that implies that the devices on those networks are compromised and being used to generate malicious bot traffic, right? And so it's going to be hard to target the origin of a lot of these bots because the IP address space that it's coming from is so vast and from innocent bystanders whose devices are compromised. It's not like we're saying, oh, hey, look, there's this particular IP that is being used to do a lot of malicious things. Let's just go target it, get it shut down, whatever it may be. And so now we're essentially chasing a bunch of ghosts across the internet that are masquerading as humans.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the fact that we are going to have to, as organizations, as businesses, be starting to focus much more on bot management, API security, right? Locking down these ways that this kind of brute force can take place against our organizations, our businesses, through what can look like legitimate, valid traffic. Very important. But that actually dovetails into our next story, which is one that you brought to us. So what's going on? What's going on as far as bots, spam, and email these days, Jonathan?
Yeah. This is an interesting one. I have a soft spot for email in case any of our viewers wanted to know. But Bleeping Computer is bringing us an article about AT&T delaying 365 Microsoft email delivery due to a spam wave. And so this is what's interesting here is that AT&T's email servers are blocking connections from Microsoft 365. And in their defense, because there's this massive influx of junk mail coming in. Also, other users are claiming that Gmail, or Google's platform, is also being blocked as part of this uptick in defenses. But what I found most interesting about this is that it's an interesting timing because we're seeing a lot of change in email security. In fact, if you haven't heard by now, you really need to start upgrading your email security configurations with things like DKIM or domain keys, or nowadays DMARC, right, which is very important. It's essentially saying, I'm authenticating who I am to send you this email, and you can validate that. And if it's not, matching all of the bits and pieces to align that I'm really who I am, then that may be considered spam. And so it's really kind of interesting timing with things right now. But AT&T is saying things are working on getting better. But in the meantime, this high volume of spam has put a kibosh on a lot of the communications for that company.
Yeah, it's the high volume that they're claiming for spam being reason. Like, I think this is the way that I wrote it up in the announcement post on LinkedIn for the show was AT&T's mail servers doing their job potentially a little too well, right? Right, like saying like, oh, hey, there's a lot of spam here, and so we're going to suppress the emails coming from this. But I think an interesting thing that's pointed out in the story on Bleeping Computer. I'm sorry, there's something right at the tip of my nose that's bothering me.
I'm having my allergy stuff too.
Yeah. They're saying that or customers are saying that, like, hey, nothing from my Gmail account is getting to my email account at all. Like, I'm trying to send these test emails, but they're not even getting a bounce back, right? The Gmail is not saying like, sorry, your message is undeliverable. It's just vanishing into the ether. So there's actually not even a way, if your email is being affected by this, for you to know that your emails aren't getting through, because those bounce back emails aren't coming through. It's the system is just eating the email.
It's being bogged down. But on the other side of it too, this is a sign that why is 365 and Gmail sending so much spam, right? Is it okay to say, hey, you guys need to take a step back and address the challenges on your platform with your users and figure out how to prevent it from even leaving your network in the first place, right? This is something I did 15 years ago in the data center days, building an outbound mail filter, because when something would be compromised, it turned into a spam cannon. It's still that way 15 years later. And rather than going and, saying, well, why are you blocking me? You have to ask yourself, well, is there something I'm doing that deserves being blocked? And you have to work on fixing that. And that's what Microsoft is claiming to do here. In fact, they've gone out of their way to say that they will start fighting spam originating from its platform. And they're also imposing daily limits for bulk emails. Now, is Google doing something similar? Quite possibly, but we also still have time.
Yeah, they also, Google did also introduce stricter spam thresholds and verification authentication requirements for bulk email senders. I think beginning of April was when they announced that. So both companies are taking a stricter stand against that. I believe actually when Google announced it, I believe when Google announced it, there was actually one of the things was a large pushback from political campaigns, because they were like, we send 400,000 emails a day as a mass send list to reach all of these constituents and stuff, and you're just going to block that. And Google was like, oh, well, just verify yourself, like go through our verification process and you won't have that problem. and there was just a lot of kind of furor around that idea that like, hey, we're going to limit this, but clearly it's something that needs to take place. I mean, on any platform that I use that's outside of that, right? Even commenting platforms, like if you try and leave too many comments on a story within a short period of time, they'll be like, hey, slow down. we think
you look like a bot. Hold on a second.
Yeah, hold on a second. So yeah, some really interesting stuff coming out there, and we're gonna keep an eye on the AT&T Microsoft 365 stuff and Gmail as well, and see if that goes anywhere, because I'm really curious, like you said, about what the campaign actually is that's creating this volume of spam that's just throttling this. But we have one more really important story to get to that I left out of the posts. I left out of everything. It's such good news. Really wanted to end on a surprise note if you haven't been following the news. But finally, unlocked. Authorities after what was the name of it? It wasn't Contra. It was what was the name? Kronos. Operation.
Oh yeah, Operation Kronos. Yes.
Operation Kronos that took place months ago. Right, taking down large chunks of Lockbit's infrastructure and their name and shame sites. During that operation in February, the authorities who were running that, the various countries, started posting very cryptic messages on those sites after they did the takedown, saying like, we know who he is. We know where he lives. We know how much he's worth. Lockbit Sup has engaged with
support.
Lockbit support, right? The account name is Lockbit Sup. That's the moniker that this person went by. And so they have finally revealed the identity of what they're calling the Lockbit kingpin, Dmitry Yuryevich Koroshev. Has been revealed as the man behind Lockbit Sup, and this is huge. Multiple countries have now sanctioned him as an individual, and the U.S. has put out, I believe, a $10 million reward to anyone.
10 million, that's correct. Yeah. To anyone who
can provide authorities with information leading to the arrest and/or conviction of Koroshev. That's huge. That we finally know who is behind this.
Yeah, this always goes to show in our good stories, especially when folks get arrested in the ransomware game, it doesn't pay to be a criminal. But especially in this case, somebody who is so involved in a lot of compromise, a lot of ransomware, and also because Lockbit operated in that affiliate network, there were almost 200 affiliates behind this operation too. Mm-hmm. Now, with the main, platform being taken down, all those affiliates no longer are able to use Lockbit. This individual still is on the run, but I could imagine he'll be captured sooner or later here.
Unfortunately, as a I believe a resident and citizen of Russia, I think was what I was seeing in the article, is that it's very unlikely that law enforcement groups are going to be able to work together. But we have seen this happen before, that these people have actually been after sanctions and being revealed, they are eventually captured. But I think there's some interesting detail that comes out of this story from the Register, right? Which is that the Operation Kronos team revealed some key facts about Lockbit. And I'm bringing these up because we have the Grit ransomware report that comes out every month. We have one coming out next Thursday that does dive a little bit deeper into some fallout from this. But also in the last quarterly report and before that, the reports that we were putting out, the Grit team was putting together, did mention, hey, the fallout from Alpha and Lockbit being disrupted is having huge knock-on impacts because ransomware as a service is the new way to do business, or is the model to do business within ransomware right now. Lockbit and Alpha were both part of that, and as soon as they were out of the picture or experiencing difficulties, other groups immediately stepped up, started advertising their ransomware as a service offerings and better terms, and attracting people over. And so Kronos did some deep dives into Lockbit Group's work, and found that 194 affiliates, like you mentioned, almost 200 affiliates were involved, but 114 of them appear to never have earned any money from their activities. They didn't engage in negotiations at all. or they were not paid after those negotiations. So 114 of those groups never earning a penny for their ransomware, which means that, you know, there are a substantial number of victims around the world who like suffered major consequences from ransomware, and it was for nothing, right? Yep. Like nothing at all. 39 appear to have never received a ransomware payment. An additional 75 appear to have never engaged in any negotiations whatsoever. They're being probed currently by law enforcement. But per the NCA, Lockbit is running at limited capacity, and the global threat from Lockbit has been significantly reduced. And the average number of attacks attributed to Lockbit has reduced by 73% in the UK since the actions in February. So that's a huge drop. And while there were 200 affiliates registered in February, that number has now fallen to 69. So they have lost significant network, significant capacity. Spent too much time talking about networks, man.
No, it's all good, because you know what? I'll tell you what, that takes us to the top of our networking hour here.
Takes us to the top of the networking hour. So leaving on some good news that that Lockbit has been the man behind Lockbit has been revealed. We are so excited that you joined us for GPS Live for this last week for May 10th. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any thoughts on any of the stories, anything that we talked about, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We love going back and taking a look at those and seeing what you guys were thinking, and if you liked what we were covering. If nothing else, then join us again next week for GPS Live again. Jonathan will be back. I will be out, so we will have a new co-host in. But other than that, I have been and will continue to be Tristan Morris.
And I am Jonathan Singer.
And we will catch you all next time.